Welcome to the Travis Masterbone podcast. I am your host, Travis Masterbone, talking some shit to impact your life. This is episode 14, titled Aristotle and Emotional Intelligence. Quote, anyone can be angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person to the right degree at the right time for the right purpose and in the right way, that is not easy. End quote, Aristotle. Who is Aristotle? Nicknamed the Master and the Philosopher. He was an ancient Greek philosopher born in 384 BCE in the kingdom of Macedonia and grew up to be arguably one of the most influential philosophers ever. He was also a scientist and one of the greatest intellectuals to exist. His range of knowledge covered most sciences and arts, biology, chemistry, logic, metaphysics, history, poetry, psychology, physics, ethics, and many, many more subjects, to say the least. It is truly amazing. His wide range of knowledge was due to his constant curiosity towards understanding life. I resonate with this quite a bit ever since I was little. Questions always emerged, and just like Aristotle, we are fascinated with the way things work on a deeper level. Why does this work like this? How does it work like that? And more importantly is life, human life. What makes human life and a whole society go well? It's been a big part of my recent years, just really trying to tap into how societies function and how humans function and how I function. And so today, I wanted to tie in the concept of emotional intelligence. I will make some inferences on how Aristotle viewed emotional intelligence. That opening quote is a great start off, but I have also been inspired by Daniel Goleman's groundbreaking book, Emotional Intelligence. And we're going to apply it today and just see if some of Aristotle's philosophies can tie in with this concept of emotional intelligence. And hopefully we can walk away with something that could help us become a bit more happy and get a little bit closer to living the quote-unquote good life. So Aristotle was all about practical wisdom, and his main four philosophical questions that he answered were, number one, what makes people happy? 2, what's art for? 3, what are friends for? And 4, how can ideas cut through a busy world? And today we're going to focus specifically on number 1, what makes people happy, or what can you do to obtain the good life? Okay, and so his book, Nicomachean Ethics, the title is after his son Nicomachus, who edited the book. In this book, he essentially is trying to identify factors that lead people to this good life. And he suggests that good and successful people all possess very distinct virtues, behaviors that show high moral standards, right? And so a virtue is a quality considered morally good or desirable in a person. We know that old cliche, patience is a virtue, and the opposite being a vice, such as gluttony. Okay, and so the theory is that we should get better at identifying, first understanding what these virtues are, and then how can we make them better within ourselves for 2 reasons. One is just to harness it and preserve it within ourselves and, fine-tune our character. But then also, 2, is to be able to identify these virtues in others as well. And in my opinion, I really started to link emotional intelligence to both of these. There's a big role emotional intelligence plays. And so Aristotle's insights of his 11 virtues are 1, courage, 2, temperance, 3, liberality, 4, magnificence, 5, magnanimity. 6, pride. 7, patience. 8, truthfulness. 9, wittiness. 10, friendliness. 11, modesty. And what he believed is that every one of these virtues was centered right in between two vices. And we can get into an example, but this is called the golden mean between two extremes of character. If you want to dive a little bit deeper into this, I suggest looking it up. He basically goes into this example where, okay, courage is one of the virtues, and that'll be in between. On the low end of on one end of the balance beam or spectrum is cowardice. The other one is rashness. Right in the middle is courage. Right? Magnificence is in between stinginess and vulgarity. And a more specific example that I wanted to get into, it related to his belief in how important conversation is. And so in his book, Nicomachean Ethics, there's a chapter that's titled Conversational Virtues. And he examines and diagnoses how people are better or worse in conversation. And knowing how to have good conversation through the brilliant mind and insights of the great Aristotle, he believes it is a key ingredient to the good life. And that makes sense. And I believe that tenfold as well. The things that you can learn, and the environment and the feelings you come to when you have a really great conversation with someone that is very, very interesting. And even sometimes when they're not the most interesting people, you still walk away with something to learn. But I think harnessing emotional intelligence plays a huge role in this. And we can zoom in a bit deeper on this golden mean between two extreme concept that Aristotle points out. And people who are on the extreme ends of these virtues, we shouldn't deem them as wicked or cast them out to the gallows, but rather deem them as unfortunate, and they might be in need of more guidance. Hence this episode. Maybe someone lacks in some of these virtues and they find themselves on the wrong end of these balance beams or these spectrums, where they might be a bit more boorish versus the wittiness virtue, right? And so this is a prime example that Aristotle uses in a conversation. Someone who is on the far left of the spectrum and is very boorish, they have a lack of sense of humor and they're offended by everything. Very a useless social skill to have this trait of boorishness, right? And then all the way to the other extreme is buffoonery. And these people are, I would deem them as ridiculous, but maybe amusing, but can't resist telling the jokes and will just say anything and everything to just try and get some attention, right? Attention seekers. We definitely have stumbled upon these people. But overall, they're both extremes. We want to find that middle ground. And both of these parties of the vice extremes, they lack the emotional awareness, I would say. So very low emotional intelligence of their awareness in a social setting. And so it's hard to have a really deep and meaningful conversation with someone and be socially skillful. And so Aristotle wants you to land right in the middle, and that's where the virtue of wittiness comes into play. And so it's quite fascinating how Aristotle has this list of too little, too much balance beam for each of these virtues that I listed. And the theory is if we can tap into our own self-awareness of where we land on these spectrums, become aware that we are on one end or the other and try to find those middle grounds and land in those 11 virtues, we have a much higher probability of living a happy and good life. And it's important to note, moral goodness takes time and is fueled by our habits and who we want to be. I suggest listening to episode 3, Atomic Habits by yours truly. Moving forward, let's dig a little deeper into the concept of emotional intelligence. and try to tie it in a bit more with this virtue-seeking philosophy of Aristotle. The basic Google definition of emotional intelligence: the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. Emotional intelligence is the key to both personal and professional success. It is the quality that allows us to confront with patience and insight, the many problems we face in all of our relationships, romantic, family, friends, but also within ourselves. So this quality of emotional intelligence, if it's high, we most likely will have very high quality relationships with people that we love, people that we don't love, anybody, and also, I think most importantly, with ourselves. And so we're so used to the general quality of this word intelligence. We glorify the IQ, and I personally think our society doesn't highlight or pay attention to emotional intelligence as much as we should. I did stumble upon a school, I believe it's an online school, who happens to be named Aristotle. They seem pretty interesting and forward-thinking when it comes to tapping into teaching students how to become a bit more emotionally intelligent for their own personal success. Very interesting. So maybe some quick blanket examples of where emotional intelligence is lacking or inadequate in one's life. If you know someone who might be really smart, uniquely clever, but somehow, some way in his personal life, it always seems to be a mess, whether it's with romantic relationships or family or friends. It's just odd how someone could be so brilliant, but yet needs a lot of fine-tuning in some of the emotional aspects of their personal lives. Or those successful moguls who are always alone, restless, and deeply depressed behind closed doors despite all the wealth and success, or powerful bosses and executives who are intolerant, unimaginative, and disliked by their peers and colleagues. Fine-tuning these deficits in these examples, I think, can be a key to alleviating these unfortunate circumstances that I'm sure individuals experience on a daily basis. So, again, we come back to that good life. How do we improve upon ourselves? And, we are social beings as well. So I think it's important to first lay the foundation of improving ourselves, identifying and fine-tuning our virtues, but then also being able to identify in others and applying it into social settings really makes a difference in people's lives. And I know this applies to mine as well. And so this school, titled Aristotle, their primary objective is to educate and teach students how to master emotional intelligence. The main four competencies of emotional intelligence are emotional self-awareness and expression, understanding the emotions of others, reasoning with emotions in general, but then also managing and regulating emotions. And so maybe somewhat of a broken record, and when I recommend this Daniel Goleman book, he definitely goes much more in depth on all of these competencies and some. But let's just do a quick little breakdown of each of these four. The first one, emotional self-awareness and expression. I would say, again, it's about just being aware of what you are doing, how you are reacting to situations, and can you ask yourself honestly, are you in control of your emotions to the best of your ability, whether it's alone or around other people? And how are you expressing them? Are you aware of this? Trying your best, in my opinion, to just refuse to trust your first impulses about a subject, a topic. I mean, politics can trigger it, or someone talking about politics or touching base on a subject that might bug you right away, or maybe their emotional expressions might bug you as well and trigger you. So it's always to kind of tiptoe, like within your own mind. and then just being aware of what exactly are you interpreting? Are you sure you're interpreting this 100% in the way that you want? Like that opening quote says, like, are you going to just act out of impulse and just rage on somebody? Or are you going to take a step back and maybe consider that you misunderstood them? Emotional intelligence helps with this a lot. And so piggybacking on that, number 2, understanding the emotions of others, being skeptical of those surface emotions that you witness in others. We all know that there are people out there that mask their pain and the things you don't know about with humor. Right? There's almost always something deeper. Or if someone is being jealous and taking jabs at you, whether it's online or in person, jealousy, deep beneath that, is nothing more than insecurity. So I think with a higher level of emotional intelligence, this is the most important one, especially when we talk about the importance of conversation from Aristotle. We need to have this high emotional intelligence to have quality conversation. In turn, it helps both parties. And then reasoning with these emotions, thinking about them in a very logical and sensible way. And I like Daniel Goleman's book because he really gets into the science and physiology of how our body and how our hormones and brain really work. It's a very difficult thing to do because we have a system. We have systems, and we don't know exactly how they're going to trigger or play off. And so for me, I think a good way to reason with my emotions is to really talk out loud and write it out and really think about events in my life. And therapy helps as well. But you got to practice. You got to go out and talk to people and interact with people and kind of test yourself and push yourself in the social realm. And see how those emotions pan out. And don't be afraid to tackle hard conversations with people. And so fourth and lastly of these competencies for emotional intelligence is managing and regulating the emotions. I know for damn certain I am not Aristotle and I am not perfect. We slip up. We let our emotions get the best of us. It happens. We're human. I think what's more important is when you do slip up, how do you snap out of it? If you do make a mistake in a social setting, what do you take away from it? What do you take away from that incident? Does it happen again? Do our best to make sure we do not repeat these mistakes. So the fine-tuning and controlling of your emotions, and then I think even most importantly is just understanding you can't control other people's emotions, but we can do our best to empathize and understand. This will make it much, much easier to navigate real dialogue. And again, it helps both parties. And so these competencies, when we start to improve on these, it has been shown by research to predict not only scholastic performance improvement, but overall well-being, the development of empathy, quality relationships. I mean, this all makes sense to me tenfold. And I think Aristotle would definitely be on board with the improvement of all these competencies in order to obtain the good life. And I wanted to end with a quote and a book recommendation. I found this meme. It was a picture of my man Keanu Reeves. I don't know if he said it or if he didn't, but if he did, here it is. Self-control. Quote, self-control is strength. Calmness is mastery. You have to get to a point where your mood doesn't shift based on the insignificant actions of someone else. Don't allow others to control the direction of your life. Don't allow your emotions to overpower your intelligence, end quote. Absolutely love it. Stumbled upon it conveniently while I was trying to brainstorm and put together this episode in tandem with this book, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. Go ahead, download the audio, buy it, read it. It breaks down the philosophical and practical steps to improving emotional intelligence, but then he also dives into really deep physiology. Bring your notepad if you are interested. It's a great book, but basically it just explains how people can use their emotions to achieve personal and professional success and goals. His theories include the 5 components of emotional intelligence, which we kind of touch base on today: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, but then empathy and social skills. So I kind of just grouped these 2 topics together: the virtues of Aristotle, good conversation, and the good life, and tying in the concept of emotional intelligence, how it plays a role. Hopefully we learned something today. We just want to try to help people to know, manage, and motivate themselves, as well as to recognize and understand other people's emotions. And I think overall, this creates such a better environment all around for everybody, socially, within yourself, within your families, in your romantic relationships, what have you. Okay, so please like, share, subscribe, all that shit. And thank you for listening to me, Travis Masterbone, and the Travis Masterbone podcast. And I look forward to you tuning in next time. Farewell.